recognizing homes can be a great place to help people grow as followers. So the church I had in Baltimore, which was a church of 50, 60 people, a small church, when we wanted to introduce that, one of the things we did is we took the guys who were the spiritual leaders in that group, there was about 4 of them, and we said, let's go to this other church and visit a church that's doing home group ministries, because they've never had this kind of thing going on in their homes. So let's go visit one. So we actually went to another state. So in Maryland, we went to Virginia, to a church that had this going that I knew. And so we went and visited one of their home groups. And they said, wow, that's amazing. Maybe we could do this after all. And then that's what we did. Is we then said, all right, tell you what, we're going to launch this and try to do it this summer. What we did on a particular summer back in 87 or 88. And so let's go ahead and let's launch this flock, this home group ministry, and we'll do it for these 7 weeks, 7 or 8 weeks of summer. And this is what we'll utilize for the tool, for the study, and here's how we're going to do this. We did training with them, and we invited, if they weren't the host of their particular small group, if there was somebody else who was hosting it, the hosts were invited. We did training with them and said, all right, here's what we want to try to do. Here's how you lead a Bible discussion. Here's how you help people learn how to pray. If you do all the praying, then they don't learn how to pray. So you've got to go ahead and provide them opportunity to pray, and tell them not be ashamed of prayer. Simple prayer is good prayer, and so part of this is teaching them how to use popcorn prayer, things simple like that, and just get them involved in praying. Make sure you don't embarrass somebody who asks a question that maybe it's kind of crazy, maybe it's kind of dumb, it doesn't matter. One of the things we teach our leaders is show no shock, almost like a nurse in a hospital. When I teach our guys how to visit people that are in the hospital, don't you dare show shock when you walk into that hospital room. You need to have a steady heart, steady hand, to love the people. Don't see all the other stuff. See the person, see the heart of the person. Focus there. And when somebody brings up something crazy, or ignorant, or wrong, don't like, what on earth? React in some crazy way. No. Steady hand, steady heart. Just, hey, that's an interesting thought. But I think perhaps what our passage is suggesting is something a little bit different from that. Let's look at the passage again. What does this passage say? And so, try to redirect is important rather than just simply shame, embarrass, or just lay the smack down on somebody, we've had times where we've had fights in home groups. I mean fights, not fist fights, but where people start arguing, and one of the things I taught our guys is, look, if two people start arguing, I've had it in meetings, in church meetings. You know what I do?
Oh, yeah.
I stand up and say, Father God, and we start praying right then and there. We're not going to monkey around with that nonsense. We're going to call upon God right in that moment. And we pray. We pray and we ask God to go to work on hearts and then talk to the people and say, you know what? This issue, obviously, you two care a lot about it. And maybe we can do some further discussion together ourselves later. But we're done on discussing it here, okay? Let's go ahead and move beyond that. And so by doing that, you don't get into the fight. You don't get into taking sides. Mm-hmm. You go ahead and say, yeah, here's what we're going to do. We're going to please God. We're going to pray to God. So these are just simple little things we do. But basically, we provide the right resources. That's why I give you the stepping beyond, to give you an idea. To me, the best tool is to write up questions for your message and use them as a study guide for how people can talk. Because one of the things we want to do with a message is we don't want them to hear the message and forget about it, right? We want them to hear it, discuss it, think about it, and live it out, right? So that's why we write up stepping beyond study guides, because it's a great tool. And that's why we utilize it that way. It helps people to grow together. Now, the last session here is on page 17 and 18. And basically, Hebrews 11. You know Hebrews 11 is the faith chapter, right? Yeah? I just have a couple minutes, but I want to share this with you. Look at you. We could look all the way through. They're ordinary people. Some of them ordinary people. Some of them big guys, big names like Abraham, Moses. All right, but then we get to the no names. Look at verse 33. What more can I say? Verse 32. Time is too short to tell about Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, and David, Samuel and the prophets, who by faith conquered kingdoms, administered justice, obtained promises, shut the mouths of lions, quenched the raging of fire, escaped the edge of the sword, gained strength after being weak, became mighty in battle, put to flight armies to flight, women received their dead raised to life again. Of course, then there's the other options. Some men were tortured, accepting relief, not accepting release. Some might gain a better resurrection. Others experienced mockings and so on. What I want you to think about with me this. As I think about our churches, and I believe God's call on our life is to go ahead and lead our churches. It's not responding. Sorry for that. We've got to think about what does it look like to lead our churches to adopt winning strategies. There's ways for us to do this. There's baby steps, or steps that we can take. As I say, and I'm going to develop, just to camp a little bit under our first point here, because I want you to think about what does it look like to develop biblical vision for your church. And I'm not talking about some dream thing, I'm talking about something altogether different. What does it look like for your church to embody something of what God reveals in His Word? So, leading our churches to adopt winning strategies. Remember, what does Jesus say? I will build my church in what? Does that sound like a preservation strategy? Does that sound like a retreat strategy? That sounds like a victorious strategy. So one of the things I ask myself is, if that was true of Ridgewood Bible Church, what would it look like? How are we reaching those people and rescuing them from the very gates, from the government of hell itself, of Satan's influence in their life? How are we all about rescuing those people? Are we really a church that's ready to welcome anybody that walks through our doors? No matter what the wreck of their life, no matter how they smell, no matter whose hand they hold? Are we willing to love them? What would have to change for us to be like that? I remember when I first became pastor at Ridge, and there came a guy that came into our church, and he had been a guy in the ministry that people knew of in the region. But he had fallen and got involved with a woman. Married that woman. And here he was coming to our church with her. And they didn't like it at all. And I began to talk to our church. What does the church look like that knows the forgiving grace of Jesus? Knows His rescuing mercy. What needs to change here? There's a lot of work we had to do in discipleship and things we tried to do in terms of helping that man and this woman and his former wife and all the facets of that I can't even begin to get into. But I'll tell you this, one of the things we went to work on is changing the whole culture of our church. Rather than being a church that is judgmental about whoever walks in the doors, because we know their story, we know where they're from, we've known what they know. Rather that being the spirit of the church, that's part of what was killing that church, became a church that began is ready to welcome and love whoever comes to our doors. Because you see, the people that come through our doors, if we're reaching people who are being rescued from the very gates of hell, guess what they look like? They don't look like church people, I guarantee you that much. They don't look like they've grown up here. They don't even look like they belong here. And their lifestyle is a wreck. The number of folks that I've been able to do marriages, when we do weddings, we do premarital counseling. It's an extensive discipleship process. 7 to a dozen different sessions. In fact, what we say is we don't do weddings, we build Christian homes. And so, now we actually do weddings, but it's the result of building a Christian home, right? But the people that come are, you know how many weddings? There's been 3 dozen weddings in the last several years that I've done. That when I first started working with that couple, they were living together apart from marriage. And they got it right. Now, there's 2 dozen others that didn't get it right. That weren't able to go on that journey with us. But these folks got it right, and they're part of our fellowship. Leading our churches to adopt winning strategies, because that's what it's all about. Through faith, we can see God work amazing ways in our life, in our church, if we'll trust Him. But not if we dig a trench and stay in it. World War I was all about trench warfare. It's horrible. It was a nightmare. If you study World War I, the advancement in firepower did not match up. In other words, the advancement of mobility and protection did not match up with the advancement in firepower. We were slaughtering people. And then lobbing all kinds of poison gases at each other. Trench warfare, they'd dig these trenches and they'd stay in them. And they'd fight. And they'd lob all kinds of nasty stuff at each other. And this, for 3.5 years, the Western Front stayed. From September of 1914 to March of 1918. 3.5 years. Basically the same. Trenches dug back. That's where you get words like trench foot, trench mouth, shell shock, entrenchment, deadlock, stalemate. All this comes from trench warfare. You had casualties were just ungodly. One day at Somme, there were 57,000 British casualties. For France, at Verdun, 380,000 casualties. You can't even begin to figure out the atrocities of trench warfare. It's horrible, unthinkable. It's a war of attrition. That's what happened. And it's just part of what went on there. But unfortunately, sometimes, guys, we've got to learn the lesson from World War I. And the basic lesson we've got to learn is you can't win the battle by digging a trench and sitting in it. You can't win battles that way. We can't help churches win battles that way. We've got to, by faith, be willing to trust God for what God would have us do next. That's what we need to do. And that's why I share with you 3 winning strategies. 1, to trust God increasingly. What does it look like to trust God increasingly? Well, 1, it begins, I personalize His promises. That's what we see Abraham doing. He could look at the deadness of his own physical abilities or the deadness of Sarah's womb and just give up on that. He's now in his 90s. Right? Or by faith, he could begin to personalize that promise. I'm going to make you a father of descendants like the stars in heaven. What would that look like? What would I have to do for that to be my reality? He had tried to substitute. We talked about that a week or so ago in our church. And we got the misery of the Arab-Israeli conflict in our world today because of that. Just part of the confusion of when he didn't personalize God's promise. Daniel personalized God's promise as he read the prophet Jeremiah. And he said that God said, 70 years are determined upon my people. He had been in captivity for 70 years. He knew time was up. He began to pray according to that promise. He personalized that promise. We need to go ahead and personalize God's promise. That's why I talk about vision. I've shared with you already about this. What is vision? It's a faith picture and passion to see God's will realized. As you meditate on the Scripture, you look at Matthew 16, you look at Ephesians 4, you look at the church of Antioch, you look at this home group ministry and Jesus ministry or in the apostles. And here's where I cannot give you first steps for. Because what you've got to do is you've got to envision for yourself. What would this look like in my church, Lord? Because the way I look in your church is different from the way I look in my church. It should. I live in a rural church, for the most part, up in northern Nye County. You are from a whole different culture. But what you've got to do is you've got to meditate on what is God saying here and what would it look like? What changes would we need to make this happen in our church? And you begin to think that through. And so I talk here about, the specs. Study God's promises. One of the things I do is I spend time reflecting on God's Word as God's promise. And as I reflect and meditate on God's Word, I begin to ask the questions. I begin to picture, what would this look like if this was true of me? What would this look like if it's true of me as a pastor? What would this look like if this was true of our church? And then I begin to examine, I begin to ask questions. What would have to change? What do we need to change? What are some steps we could take to begin to see this realized? And I don't want to tell you these are the steps we took, because they may not be the steps you should take. I believe the core to this, the key to this, is having biblical vision and then beginning to ask these questions, to examine your world. You have different giftedness in your church than I do. You have a different culture you're trying to reach than I do. You've got to go ahead and ask God to lead you by His Spirit. What does this look like for you? So it's indigenous to your fellowship. You don't need to try to copy what I've done. Claim God's passion. You see, it's a picture and it's a passion. See, the difference between a vision and a dream is a dream. I had that one last night. Nightmare or whatever. It doesn't affect me. Oh, Deb will tell me some of her dreams. I'm like, that's crazy. But it doesn't affect her next week. But I tell you what, when I have a vision, when I begin to look at the Scriptures and I begin to think through, Lord, I know that's your heartbeat. I know that's what you want for our church. I begin to share His passion. That doesn't let go of me. It doesn't let go. You see, a vision just keeps after you until you fulfill it. It's like Nehemiah. He didn't just have a dream for what it would look like to have walls in Jerusalem. It was a vision. It was a heart. It drove his heart. It drove his planning before he shared with the king. Even before he did, while he was praying and fasting, you know what else he was doing? He was planning. He was beginning to ask God, what would it look like? What would it have to do? What materials would we have to have? What kind of opportunities would we need to have to make this happen? So when the king finally said, yes, let's do it, he began to lay out the plan. Here's what I need, king. People, we have got to go ahead and allow God to go ahead and guide us to share His passion. He wants to bless our church far more than we've ever imagined. He really does. He has a passion for this. And He wants us to share His passion. And I began to share His passion. I was sharing with Brother Bill about our passion to reach Lower Town. And that was how God began to formulate that in my heart, through my son-in-law's ministry, through observing what some other churches are doing, and begin to think through, what would it look like for us to care about this community, where this forgotten community, where the schools are closing. There's just nothing for the kids. The programs that used to be for youth are closing and moving. Or what would it look like for us as a church to be your church to those people? They're within 5 miles of us. What do we need to do? We begin to think through, what kind of steps could we take? When we begin to take those steps, people, we're going to trust God for breakthroughs in Lower Town. Claim God's passion. It drives us. We pray about it. We think about it. We plan on it. John, you were back there again this Wednesday, right? You with Charlene to Lower Town, right? Guys have gone back every Tuesday, Wednesday, Sunday, tonight. Sunday night, they're going to be back there again. We're going to be doing further with garden boxes and other things, children and everything. Just step out in faith. You got to step out in faith. Is it always going to work? No, one of the things we tell our people. Sometimes, I told people about this Lower Town thing. I told them out front. I said, look here. When Jesus sought out, sent out the 70, when He sent out the 12, He told them, it's possible that you're going to go to a community and the community is totally going to reject you. And you just move on. And you look to the community that will be receptive. It's entirely possible that we'll invest, we'll give, we'll serve, we'll do all we can to this community, and they could just say, no way, we don't want any part of this. We'll love them, we'll pray for them, and we'll just take the next step. But sometimes, when you take a risk, you're going to fail. That's why some of them saw great victories, but some of them, you saw it in Hebrews 11. Some saw their dead raised to life, but some were tortured. Others experienced mocking and scourging and bonds and imprisonment. They were stoned and they were sawn asunder. I don't know what the result will be every time. But we're going to take a risk by faith. Because I don't believe God wants us to dig a trench and sit in it. No way. We're not doing that. Now, as I said, if there ever was a church that was rigid, used to tradition, in their trench and sitting in it, it was Ridgewood Bible Church. So I'm not talking about, well, we were already on the go. No, we were not. And it was not easy. Trust God increasingly, realizes His provision. I give you the picture there of Nick Vujicic, guy born without arms and legs, serving the Savior today. Powerful testimony. Moves my heart. He can do that with what God's given him. In fact, he says, I give you the quote there, no matter what card you're dealt, my Heavenly Father owns all the chips. He's got it all. Let's trust God for what He's going to do. You can't win the battle by digging a trench and sitting in it. You just can't. My time's up. But my closing thoughts there, you can see, take some ground. That's what Antioch did. They did. There's 20 descriptions in here of ways in which they lived out their faith and risked it all, trusting God, for God to intervene, that they could not do this apart from God's intervention. Abraham, offer up his son Isaac? What did he have to have as a vision in his own heart? It tells us in the text, it says, he believed that since God said that through Isaac he would multiply the descendants, that God would raise up Isaac from the dead if he killed him. Now, if he didn't have that faith personalizing of God's promise, would he have been so bold to be ready to take the life of his son? According to Hebrews 11, no. What gave him the boldness to go ahead and step out in faith was he really believed God would raise him from the dead. People, we need to personalize God's promises. We can't keep sitting in a trench expecting God to do something new. We've got to go ahead and get out of the trench. Target greater victory. There's all kinds of greater victory we can know. In World War I, they finally developed the strategy of developing tanks. And then with the development of tanks, with close air support and infantry right alongside of these armored vehicles, they will break trench warfare. And the Allies were able to have a victory. But we got to go ahead and be ready to do whatever God calls us to do. Brothers and sisters, it's not a piece of cake. It's not easy. Satan's working against us.
Can we
Yeah.
go
in some felt
back
blanks.
to 17?
Yeah.
Okay, my wife said that's power. We're almost done, but
Yeah.
on page 18,
Yeah.
take
Take some ground.
What's
Take some
underneath
ground.
by taking some?
Take some ground. Means by faith you go ahead and you try to achieve some victory. You try to take the next step to grow your ministry. Take some steps. Take some ground. In warfare, it means you're trying to go ahead and win a few battles. In our case, we're trying to take some ground out of Lowertown. We believe that's an area that Satan has ruled too long, way too long. I mean, there's misery, there's drugs, there's mess, there's brokenness. We're hard pressed to find a family there that's a nuclear family. Every family we've connected with is broken, blended, or just living together. They're not just a 75% situation. We're looking at 100% right now so far. It's a mess. They need to be rescued from the pit. Take some ground. By taking some initiative, the first and the second, I don't know if it had blanks on that.
Yes.
Yes.
Taking some risks is the second bullet point there. Risks like Daniel did, like the church of Antioch did. Target greater victory is the third major point there. And here is by taking the right track. In Hebrews 13 is, God calls His people to trust their leaders and to follow their faith. You read Hebrews 13? And what that suggests in Hebrews 13, verse 7 and 17, that you and I need to be walking by faith in such a way that our people can follow us. What are we attempting for God by faith that we could not do by ourselves? That's going to take an extra work of God to make this happen. if we're just doing the same old, we're not. We've got to go ahead and think in terms of, if we're going to lead by faith, Lord God, what do I need to be trusting you for that I've not led our people to experience yet? What's something, fresh that way? Now, not every track is a good track, right? Abraham and Sarah learned that, right? This Hagar thing, that's a wreck. That's not a good thing. Jacob, same thing. A lot of bad tracks. Isaac, yeah. So by keep taking the right track, and the second bullet point under target greater victory, by breaking the tape. Looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, now is set down. All right? Breaking the tape. You finish strong. Because you can't win the battle by digging a trench and sitting there. I told you about decisions. I'm getting people to think about decisions. Before we close the prayer, I got some shovels.
Got some shovels.
I got some shovels. Digging trenches and sitting in it is not what God's called us to do. And so you get a black Sharpie and mark on that, no.
No.
No digging trenches and sitting in it. You don't want that. No. We want to go ahead and trust God for the way He wants to do this. I got more shovels.
You make it sound like Christianity's a movement.
There. Oh, it's mightier than that. It's a movement of God, guys. Well, I'm over time, guys. I was supposed to leave time for Q&A. I've had some Q&A with you on the course, but I'm sorry.
I'm just wondering though, is